Hi everyone and welcome to March's video tarot forecast. A few days late, admittedly, because of Snowmageddon here in the UK, which is probably around about 3 or 4 inches of snow, which is enough to just bring the entire country to a halt for a few days. So apologies for that. But we're now in the thaw and back on track. And so here is your reading. I have shuffled the cards and I'm going to just set out a little bit of information in terms of card positionings for those of you who are new. And if you are new, welcome. The first card that I draw is the foundational card, and that is the energy that you're bringing in. It's internal energy, something that has happened, but is going to be having a tangible impact on the current energy, which is the second card, which is basically the inner and outer weather forecast of what's going on in your world. And you may be able to correlate it to what's going on inside, to something going on directly outside you, and also may correlate it to something that is broader in reach in terms of affecting people around you and perhaps even wider than that. So really you can go as specific or as broad as you want, and sometimes all at the same time, because everything is ultimately connected, in my opinion. And then finally, the third card, which is the agency card. So, the tool card, something that you can use in order to act upon or be with what it is that's going on that empowers you in some way. This is not an attempt to control, rather it is the surfboard. So if you're on an ocean and there's waves, and sometimes the waves are great to surf with, sometimes it's great to do some paddle boarding, and sometimes actually the waves are apt to sort of dunk you under the water. You'll be thankful for the surfboard. So the third card is your surfboard. It is what you can use to get through whatever it is that you're encountering, whether that's nice and calm, whether it's too calm, whether it's just what you want, or whether it's too much of what it is that you want, or whether it's something you don't want at all. So without further ado, I'm going to draw the first card. So again, this is the foundational card. It's something that's happened. It's not something that's going to happen. It's at the very most, it's in the process of happening. But really, it's the residual energy that you're bringing in. It's how you are approaching what it is that's going on. So I'm just going to put the 3 cards out, and the first card is the 3 of Swords. I am pretty certain that this has come up quite a few times. It is a very interesting card. This is a very specific way of looking at it with this deck. A lot of people will relate to the Rider-Waite-Smith version, which is the 3 swords piercing a heart. Actually a sort of symbolic heart rather than a physical heart, and with cloudy weather. Well, the weather here is no less grey and dull, except here there is a sense of smallness. This figure, as you can see there at the bottom of the card, is very small next to an incredibly imposing, what I like to see of as a door, with a grille, as you can see above, which is hiding light source, or 2 light sources actually. So some of the things that are written on the card are doubt, sorrow, and not clear. In terms of what the card means, it can be as simple as feeling a torn sense of allegiances, particularly a sense of more than 2 people in the game where you, the protagonist, are feeling left out. So it can be that sense of that eternal triangle where you are the one who is having the door closed in your face and feeling that sense of isolation from the 2 other light sources on the other side of the door. So that's at its most practical, at its most tangible. But there's also the 3 of Swords is a sense of an existential pain or sorrow. And Lon Milo Duquette talks about this very beautifully in his book, Understanding Aleister Crowley's Thoth Tarot, which I know we're not working with the Thoth deck, but actually Carl Röhrig, who designed these cards, has very much designed along similar lines to the Thoth sometimes, and including the naming of the cards, and this one being sorrow as it is in the Thoth. It's an existential sorrow. So if you imagine the Ace of Swords as being the mind, the swords of the mind, Ace of Swords is insight, it's the potential. It's the fullest potential of the sword suit. It doesn't exist in everyday life, but it is really about the mind, intellect, insight. So at its highest potential, the Ace of Swords is the potential for incredibly keen sight, incredibly a perceptive ability to see through everything, to be able to discern and then to act on that. It is the spoken word, it is the written word. So it's all about communicating based on that insight. And so if you think about many of the legends and myths around swords, then you can see that the use of the sword not only as a weapon, but a way of passing out what is true and what is false. And when I say pass, P-A-R-S-E. So you have the Ace of Swords, and then you move into this Two of Swords, and that's when the swords energy comes down into the realm of us. We are in this this world of opposites. We're in this world of everything having an opposite. So the Two of Swords, you grab the ace and you bring it down, and then there's this balancing act that needs to happen. And swords, sharp, double-edged, very, very volatile in terms of their action and how quickly they're mutable. They're very mutable because they're also they're associated with the element of air, so things can move very quickly. So it's a really, really delicate balancing act in the Two of Swords to get that kind of balance between how the mind can swing from one pole to the next. And out of that comes this third aspect, which is this sorrow. And when we can think then and reflect, so the Ace of Swords is no reflection because there is nothing to reflect into. It's the one. When we are able to reflect, then we can start to feel a sense of separation. And so the Ace of Swords can be an existential sense of missing that unity in the mind. And so really then Lon Milo Duquette talks about, and I'm going to paraphrase, that we were so fortunate that we can be in the state of the Three of Swords, of that kind of sorrow of the missingness of something, which also paradoxically implies its presence. So it can feel painful. That's not swords. Swords are of the mind, but then cups, the feelings will come in. You can feel that in your body. There's discs, pentacles. And it can affect your energy, which is wands. So in terms of that sense of feeling what it is that you're missing, feeling apart, as opposed to a part. And you can see that this very, very, there you go, the double-edged sword of the Three of Swords, cutting deeply in that sense of separation from source. So that separation can be an existential separation. It can feel like a separation from life, from oneself, from someone else, with a third party involved. Or it can feel all of those things, because that feeling of separation, if there's a third party involved and you're the one on the outside sort of looking in, is really a replaying of the essential separation from something inside. And also going back to the separation that we have when we come out of the womb, and the separations thereafter that we feel. So it is a profoundly feeling-based card, strangely enough, for the fact that it's swords, but its genesis is in the mind, and that is what you're bringing in. So there is that feeling of the light being blotted out, and perhaps a longing or a yearning, or perhaps even just a sense of, as the card says, sorrow. So I'll just show it again one more time so that you can see it. And see that figure with the door there, and see if somehow you can relate that to something in your life or what's going on inside. So that's what you're bringing in. As I said, it's already happened, or it's in the process of happening. It's not going to happen. So you should know what this card means for you. And then this is the current weather. This is what the Three of Swords is coming into. And that is the Ace of Wands. So we've already spoken about an ace. So now you'll know that aces are pure potential. They are something that you need to hold or grab hold of. It's something that you need to actively use and work with. So in other words, it is being offered, it is there, it is present as a potential, but it's up to you to work with it. So the Ace of Wands it's the beginning of the deck. It's the way that I use the cards. Wands are the first suit in the deck, the first suit in the minor arcana, and the ace is the initiation of that. So no, not only is it an initiation or a beginning of something in a sort of smaller sense, but it really is the beginning of something bigger, something greater. It's a new cycle. Or it's the potential for a new cycle, because, as you said, ace is non-incarnate. It doesn't exist here. It's this paradoxical thing of this state of it not existing, and yet it is up to you to be able to harness it and work with it. A bit like drawing the energy down from where it is, having faith that something is there, trusting the process, being able to work with it. So Ace of Wands, fire, it's libidinal energy, and that can be sexual, and it may not necessarily. It's based on that very highly potent, creative, fiery, initiatory energy. It is the energy, if you hold to the Bible, of the word of God, which is that energy that allows everything to spring into existence. It is the energy that precedes the word, actually. It's what causes the word to be spoken. Let there be light. There was the energy that preceded that statement, let there be light. And so therefore, there is light there with the Ace of Wands. It's fire. It's highly potent and creative. I'm going to see if there's anything here on the card that springs out at me. It is just simply beginning. And actually, in this particular card, there's also one that just says begin. So really, it's a very directive form of, it's a very directive card. Begin, start. This is, if you have something that is, if you have a plan or a project in mind, or if it might not even be a plan, it might not even be up here yet. It might just be a felt sense of a new beginning. Then know that this is the phase that you're moving into. It may be that you can't actually act yet. You may have to wait for something. The atmosphere or the environment, though, is ripe for something to happen. So it's really that very fine balancing act about being able to take advantage of that energy and meet it, and be able to somehow be able to meet it, but also then by meeting it, you're actually activating it. So it's a felt sense, as I said, because it's libidinal. You will feel it in your body. It may then be that your feelings are in some way indicative of the fact that there is something there as well, and then your thoughts append to that, and then you can bring something into being. As you can see, I'm working through the suits, but actually it's that feeling that you get before that. It's that desire. It's a desire. Desire isn't an emotion. It's much more than that. It is fire. So that's what you're moving into. Start of something new, a new project, a new creative endeavor. Take the term creative as broadly as possible. It may be art. It may be something to do with, that we immediately think of as creative. It may not be. It may be an idea. It may be a project that seems mundane, and yet it asks for this kind of energy. So the energy is available. It's really the most potent energy that, and in the highest concentration possible that you have. You have it there, available. You have to use that. You can't just sit there on your ass and expect it to happen. But when you do get up off your ass and work with the intention of it happening, then what happens is your tanks are filled. So there has to be that action from you. Otherwise, the wand is just waiting there in potential, and it will wait there, and then the moment will pass. So this is about grabbing that opportunity. So that's what's going on in the current weather. So you've come from this sense of foundational separation from something, and this may be then that sense of separation, that sense of existential sorrow, suddenly becomes makes more sense, or it's contextualized by what's happening now. that there's almost that sense of feeling a sense of separation and otherness in order to re-engage with something in a different way. You will know that from your own particular circumstances. If you're a little bit unsure about it, then what I'd suggest is that you can just scoot off an email to me. You can comment underneath the video here, because I'll be posting this on YouTube, and then you'll be able to then possibly be able to clarify, or even just ask a question. Do you think it could mean this, Sarah? And I can come back to you and say that it possibly could. But what I'm saying is really essentially that the Three of Swords and the Ace of Wands are not separate. They're not two different things. That's not the intentionality behind this reading. The one leads into the other. The one prepares or paves the way for the other. And it may be an intuitive way of paving that way. It may be counterintuitive. It may be that you look back and go, oh my goodness, now I can understand why it is I was feeling this, or why it was that this happened. Because the ace needed to have the clear space in order to blaze its full glory in the landscape. Okay, so there is that. And then we finally come to the third card, which is the Tool. So this is where you have agency. This may speak to how it is that you hold on to the ace. It may speak to something else. We'll see as I turn it over. I haven't looked at it yet. And this is your third card, the Hermit, the Major Arcana card, card number 9. Essentially, alone time. Time to contemplate. Time to integrate, time to face what it is that's going on inside. So the Hermit implies separation from the world. I know that a lot of people, and I will include myself among this, that sometimes get the Hermit and go, oh no, does that mean that I'm just going to be alone and nobody's going to come round? I'm not going to be able to, be in the world? And that's not necessarily it. There can be a sense of sequestration or being cut off from something, and it may be that in its most extreme form, the Hermit really is this period of isolation, which may be physical, but not necessarily. It may be asking for the Hermit's energy to be moving through, that you surrender to this sense of needing that time. And it's an introvert kind of card. And many introverts, myself included, will say that they can be out in the world, but then need to come back into the hermitage to be able to sift through what's happened, to be able to have that space and time to work through what's going on. That also implies that a sense of knowing what's going on, that sometimes that doesn't happen. It may be that there is a sense of not knowing. There's a confusion, a lack of clarity. So you could look at this and go, oh my goodness, I'm supposed to be reaching for the ace, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this, because I can't see the forest for the trees. And really what it's suggesting here is patience. Because if there is a lack of clarity, then you're still in the Three of Swords, and that needs to work itself through. That sense of not being clear, or a sense of confusion or sorrow, needs to work itself through, and you've got the best card possible to do that with the Hermit, which is tending to that inner light that is there. It's inside, it's not outside. You're not going to find it out in the world. You're not going to find it in someone else. You can go out and see if you can search it out in every nook and cranny and corner and person, whatever it is, and it's inside. That's where the hard work comes in, because we are conditioned, particularly in our area of the world and the West, for those of us who are watching who there, that we are, our way of dealing with discomfort is extroverted in quality. We want to find the solution in something or someone else. And the Hermit is asking us to find it inside. And that can be tough work. It can be uncomfortable. And the point is that it's uncomfortable not by accident, because the discomfort is tending to our unfinished business. It's working through the Three of Swords in order to reach that inner light, which then can be tended to and nurtured and brought into existence as the Ace of Wands. So if you see this, the Hermit's face is facing towards the Ace. It's a very, very similar background. As you can see, this is not. This is a very different card. This is a different state. this is what you're heading towards. This here, sorry, there, this is what you get to use, or it's available to you. So both of these cards, interestingly, you know, the Ace of Wands is non-incarnate, so there is a sense of having to feel your way through to it. And the Hermit, because it's major arcana, you can't just simply snap your fingers and go, well, I am being the Hermit, because the major arcana cards are much bigger than us. They are forces to be reckoned with. They aren't things that are there at our beck and call. There is a sense of surrendering into the potential for the Hermit, and then let the Hermit do its work through you. So in other words, there is a greater wisdom at play here than the mind. And in fact, the mind is what got you into that. So it's about I'm not going to say no mind, because then we think about no mind and then we're back in the mind again. But perhaps it's then just understanding that you don't need to know everything. You may not know anything or much at all. And that's all right, because there are forces here that are different. There is the libidinal fiery force of the initiatory energy of wands that you're shifting into. And then there is this major arcana kind of Hermit card that you are working with that is bigger than you. So there is a sense of being receptive around it, which might be quite difficult because Ace of Wands is not really receptive. It's much more action orientated. It's phallic. But to be with the Hermit is to be with this paradox of being receptive around this action orientated energy. I know that I'm talking around it a little bit, and it's very difficult to be concrete, but it's difficult to be concrete first of all with an ace, because it's up to you how that's going to work. But then it's also difficult to be concrete around the major arcanas, because you're working with something in the collective unconscious that then shifts into the personal unconscious. So it's where we are all connected underneath, that's deeply in the unconscious. And then, but then it comes up and has a personal expression through you. And then it's to be aware. So it's going back to the surfboard analogy. The Hermit is the surfboard, really, of that place of contacting with the ocean. You can't call the ocean. You can't ask it to do its bidding, to do your bidding. It does its own bidding. So you are not going to, I mean, if you sat there and demanded that a wave come up and carry you into the shore, I mean, you'd be able to notice that that's probably a form of mild insanity. So really what you do is you have your surfboard, and the Hermit here is resting on that, not necessarily knowing where it's going to take you, but trusting that it's there and it has a purpose, and that it is going to be able to help you with this initiatory light of the Ace of Wands. So if you want tangibles, then it's really what I've said. It's alone time for inner contemplation, facing what's going on inside, tapping the wisdom within, finding the light inside, and then nurturing that into the flame that then can be directed outside. But it is from the inside out, not from the outside in. You aren't going to find this outside. You're going to find it inside. And it might be a tiny, tiny, tiny flame. It might only be perceptible from a very mild amount of heat or a little smoky sensation. You know, it is there, but it's there. And what's going to interfere with that is that sense of feeling cut off from something, that existential sense of a loss of something, which is actually not true. It's what the mind does. So nurture that flame within, and that is where the Hermit then can shift something into then the next cards in the major arcana. The next card is the Wheel of Fortune. It's how something changes. That works very nicely with the Ace of Wands, which is that initiation into something new inside first. The rest will take care of itself, because you will then know what it is that you're meant to do. But if confusion is the order of the day, then at least you can know that that's something that is quite literally on the cards. If you have any questions or comments, let me know. And otherwise, I will send this out with much love and see you next month. Goodbye.